They laughed when Ethan handed a sandwich to a ragged man outside the gas station. The manager fired him on the spot. Said rules matter more than pity. Said vagrants don't belong here. But what they didn't know, that vagrant was a decorated Major General. And that night Marines rolled in. Humvees blocked the pumps. Cameras rolled. Carl Benson thought he was enforcing discipline. He didn't know he was humiliating a war hero. Stick around, because when honor walks back through the door in full uniform, every smug rule gets shattered. Justice isn't coming quietly, it's coming in convoy. Share your location and the time you're watching this in the comments section. Hit subscribe so you never miss an upload. The harsh fluorescent lights of Eastside Gas and Shop cast an unforgiving glow as Carl Benson, station manager of 15 years, watched the security feed with mounting disgust. His perfectly polished name badge caught the glare reflecting his twisted expression as he observed Ethan Miller, yet again, giving away merchandise to some vagrant. The constant droning of the coolers couldn't mask the thunder of his pulse in his ears. Discipline builds success. Carl Benson muttered his father's mantra, steeling his resolve, as he rose from his office chair. Each click of his dress shoes against the linoleum floor punctuated his growing fury. 15 years of rigid protocol of climbing from clerk to assistant manager to manager, all built on following rules without exception. He wouldn't let some bleeding heart kid destroy that. The security camera caught Miller's gentle smile as he handed the homeless man, dressed in what appeared to be tattered military fatigues, a warm sandwich and coffee. The sight made Carl Benson's jaw clench. His reflection in the glass door showed exactly who he'd fought to become crisp white shirt, perfectly knotted tie authority in every line of his face. "This ends now," Carl Benson announced, shoving through the front doors. The blast of cold night air carried the scent of gasoline and defeat. Miller's eyes widened as Carl Benson approached, but the kid didn't back down. The homeless man clutched his coffee, shrinking back into the shadows. "Sir, please, he's a veteran." Miller started, but Carl Benson cut him off with a raised hand. "You're fired, Miller. Clear out your locker." Carl Benson's voice carried across the empty parking lot, sharp as a whip crack. He pulled out his phone, already recording. "And if you ever try to use this place as a reference, this video will show exactly why you were terminated. We have protocols. Rules exist for a reason." A car slowed as it passed the passenger filming the confrontation. Within hours, what your night shift drama would trend, though not in the way Carl Benson imagined. He didn't notice the homeless man's military bearing the way other customers had stopped to stare, or how his own reflection now showed something harder, colder than the successful manager he'd dreamed of becoming. "Someone's got to maintain standards," Carl Benson declared to his silent audience, straightening his badge. "Now get off my property, both of you." Miller's quiet words carried like thunder. "Major General, sir, I'm sorry." Carl Benson froze, something cold slithering down his spine as the homeless man stepped into the light. The general's eyes held decades of command, even through the grime of circumstance. For the first time in 15 years, Carl Benson felt his carefully constructed world tremble. Would the rules he'd built his life around survive the night? Type power in the comments if you've ever seen authority crumble. In his office later, Carl Benson polished his name badge, watching his distorted reflection. "Discipline builds success," he whispered, but the words rang hollow. The security cameras showed an empty parking lot, but the night felt heavy with change. Somewhere his video was already spreading, carrying a very different message than he'd intended. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, harsh and unforgiving, as Carl Benson wondered if maybe some rules were meant to be broken. Have you ever watched your certainty shatter? Comment below with your story of when rules and humanity collided. Carl Benson smoothed his tie, studying the precise columns of his quarterly report. His numbers are perfect as always. 15% increase in profits, 20% reduction in wastage. The firing of Ethan Miller should feel like just another line item, another efficient decision to maintain his impeccable standards at Station 247. But something keeps scratching at the edges of his certainty, like fingernails on glass. The homeless veteran's eyes had pierced through his carefully constructed walls, reflecting something Carl hasn't allowed himself to see in decades. They were his father's eyes, the same steel-blue determination he remembers from childhood before everything changed. His fingers trace the worn edges of the photograph hidden in his desk drawer. Major Richard Benson stands tall in his dress uniform, medals gleaming. "Discipline builds character, son," he'd always said. But there had been something else, too, something Carl had chosen to forget. And character shows mercy. The sudden whop, whop, whop of military helicopters overhead draws his attention. Through his office window, he watches 3 Blackhawks sweep low across the city. His phone buzzes, another corporate notification about optimization metrics. For the first time in 15 years, Carl's finger hovers over the response button, trembling slightly. "Mr. Benson." His assistant's voice crackles through the intercom. "There's something you should see." The local news website loads on his computer screen. His throat tightens as he reads the headline, "Decorated General Spotted Among City's Homeless. Investigation Launches into Veteran Support Failures." The image shows the same man Ethan had tried to help, but now in full dress uniform from decades ago. Major General Walter Green, hero of 3 campaigns, recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross. Carl's perfectly ordered world begins to crack. He pulls up the security footage from this morning, watching himself berate Ethan. "Company policy is clear." He heard his own voice, cold and distant. "Resources are not to be wasted on vagrants." The word vagrant tastes like ash in his mouth now. More notifications flood his phone. Corporate is concerned about social media buzz. Rockirk Station shame is trending. Someone had filmed the confrontation. His hands shake as he scrolls through comments comparing him to every petty tyrant who ever hid behind rules to avoid doing what's right. The photograph of his father seems to watch him with disappointment. Carl remembers now, the night before his father's deployment, his last deployment. They'd stopped at a gas station, and his father had bought coffee for a shivering man outside. "Sometimes, son, rules need to bend so humanity can stand straight." He'd buried that lesson under years of corporate advancement performance metrics and the comfortable certainty of black and white policies. But now, watching the footage again, he sees himself through his father's eyes, and through the eyes of Major General Walter Green. The dam breaks. Memories flood back his father's funeral, the veterans who came to honor him, their stories of his mercy and courage. Carl had turned away from that legacy, built walls of rules and regulations to protect himself from the messy complexity of compassion. Have you ever felt your certainty crumble? The question echoes in his mind as he stares at his reflection in the computer screen, barely recognizing himself. The man who fired Ethan Miller looks like a stranger, a man his father would never have recognized. Drop a "remember" in the comments if you've ever had your perfect world shaken by an unexpected truth. His phone buzzes again. Corporate wants a statement, a plan to handle the PR crisis. But Carl Benson, for the first time in 15 years, isn't thinking about corporate. He's thinking about his father's eyes reflected in a homeless general's gaze, asking him what kind of man he's chosen to become. Carl Benson's hands tremble as he watches the convoy of Humvees roll into his meticulously maintained gas station parking lot. The military vehicle's diesel engines rumble through his bones, drowning out the usual hum of gas pumps that had always brought him comfort. He clutches the station manager's badge that's been his shield of authority for 15 years, its cold metal now feeling like a burning accusation against his palm. The sight of reporters swarming around the Humvees makes Carl Benson's stomach churn. Their cameras click in rapid succession. A sound that once meant order and documentation now feels like a firing squad of judgment. His phone buzzes again. The corporate office's 5th call in an hour. He lets it ring, transfixed by the chaos unfolding before him. "Sir, that homeless veteran you removed from the premises." A young reporter thrusts a microphone toward Carl Benson's face. "Did you know he was Major General Walter Green, the decorated war hero who saved an entire battalion in Afghanistan?" Carl Benson's world tilts sideways. The military photo of his father in his pocket seems to gain 100 pounds. He'd always claimed his strict enforcement of rules honored his father's military legacy. Now that same dedication has led him to humiliate a man who embodied everything his father fought for. His tablet pings with another social media notification. Gas station hero is trending nationwide, accompanied by security footage of Ethan Miller sharing food with the disguised Major General. Each replay shows Carl Benson storming out, pointing aggressively, his face contorted with self-righteous anger. The comments scroll endlessly. "This is what compassion looks like. Manager needs to be fired. Disgraceful treatment of our veterans." The corporate email arrives with a distinctive chime that makes Carl Benson flinch. His fingers feel numb as he opens it, scanning phrases that blur together. "Immediate review of conduct, violation of corporate values, pending investigation." The security camera footage he'd used to document Miller's violation has become evidence of his own failure. Through his office window, Carl Benson watches as Major General Green himself emerges from a Humvee, now dressed in full military regalia. The medals on his chest catch the morning sun, each one a testament to the character Carl Benson failed to recognize, beneath worn clothes and a weathered face. "Have you seen this, Mr. Benson?" A different reporter holds up a phone showing his station's reviews plummeting. "Your location's rating has dropped from 4.8 to 1.2 stars in 3 hours. Do you have any response to the public outrage?" Carl Benson's throat constricts as he sees Miller in the background, speaking with Major General Green. The young man's compassion had threatened Carl Benson's ordered world, or so he'd thought. Now, watching them talk, he realizes Miller had seen the humanity he'd been too rigid to recognize. The station's phone rings again. This time it's his sister. "Carl, Mom's crying. She saw the video. Dad would have been so disappointed." The words hit harder than any corporate reprimand could. Carl Benson's perfectly ordered world continues to crumble as Docker's gas station. Hero reaches 1 million mentions. Each news van's flashing lights illuminates another crack in the foundation of rules and regulations he'd built his life upon. The weight of his choices bears down on him like the judgment of every person who ever served alongside his father. He reaches for his father's photo, worn smooth at the edges from years of carrying it close. "I thought I was protecting your values, Dad," he whispers to the image. "But I've betrayed everything you taught me about honor and respect." The day stretches into evening, but the cameras don't leave. Carl Benson stands in his office watching his carefully controlled domain transform into a symbol of everything wrong with putting rules before humanity. The badge in his hand no longer feels like a symbol of authority. It's become a reminder of how power without compassion leads to disgrace. Drop 1. If you've ever realized you were on the wrong side of compassion. The sun sets on Carl Benson's empire of order each passing minute, bringing new revelations about how his rigid adherence to rules had blinded him to the very values he claimed to uphold. Tomorrow's headlines already taking shape in his mind, each one a testament to how quickly certainty can crumble when confronted with true honor and dignity. Officer Carl Benson adjusts his tie hands, trembling slightly as he stands before the fluorescent-lit corporate boardroom. His father's military photo burns in his breast pocket, each heartbeat pressing it closer. The sterile air feels different today. No longer the comfort zone of rules and regulations, but a battleground for change. Our current policies are destroying more than just employee morale. Carl Benson declares his voice initially wavering, but finding its strength. The PowerPoint behind him illuminates the room with statistics about veteran homelessness, each number a silent accusation against the system he once ruthlessly enforced. A whisper of movement ripples through the board members, but Carl Benson presses on his fingers, brushing against his manager's badge. Once a symbol of rigid authority, now feeling heavy with responsibility. The security camera in the corner blinks steadily, recording this moment just as it had captured his shameful firing of Ethan Miller. Carl Benson's throat tightens at the memory, but he draws himself straighter. We have an opportunity, no an obligation, to transform our stations into veteran-friendly spaces. His voice grows stronger with each word, the tremor replaced by conviction. A board member interrupts her voice, sharp with skepticism. Mr. Benson, wasn't it you who terminated an employee last week for violating policy? The question hangs in the air like a sword. Carl Benson feels his face flush, but he doesn't back down. Yes, and that mistake taught me something profound about leadership. He pulls out his father's photo, holding it up. This man taught me about service before self. I forgot that lesson behind a desk of protocols. The presentation continues each slide, showing proposed changes, designated rest areas for veterans, food donation programs, partnership opportunities with local VA offices. Carl Benson's badge catches the light as he gestures, no longer gleaming with authority, but glowing with purpose. The video of my actions went viral for all the wrong reasons. Carl Benson admits the hashtag Benson backfire, flashing briefly on screen. But we can make headlines for the right ones. His fingers trace the edge of his badge, remembering how he once used it to intimidate rather than inspire. A senior executive leans forward. This is a significant deviation from our current model, Mr. Benson. Why should we trust your judgment now? Carl Benson pauses, his hand instinctively touching his father's photo. Because I was wrong, he says simply, the words echoing in the silent room. And now I'm standing here, not as the manager who fired a compassionate employee, but as someone who learned that real leadership means having the courage to change. The boardroom clock ticks loudly as Carl Benson unveils the final slide, a proposed pilot program for veteran support at his station. His tie feels loose now, his stance more natural, as if shedding the rigid armor he'd worn for so long. Type transform if you believe one person's change can inspire an entire company, he says, addressing not just the board, but the cameras recording this moment for the company's internal channel. Share this presentation if you want to see real corporate change. The fluorescent lights still buzz overhead, but Carl Benson stands differently beneath them now. The manager's badge on his chest catches the light one final time. No longer a shield to hide behind, but a symbol of the transformation one person can undergo when they choose to take a stand. Drop 2 in the comments if you believe in the power of corporate change. Carl Benson concludes his presentation. His father's photo returned to his pocket, but its lesson forever imprinted on his heart. The rigid manager has become something else, a leader with the courage to challenge the very system he once defended. Carl Benson stands frozen, watching the veterans file into Patriot's stop, each face a mirror, reflecting years of misguided pride. The morning sun catches his new community director badge, so different from the manager's badge he once wielded like a weapon. The gleaming metal no longer feels like armor. It's a reminder of transformation. The applause thunders through the renovated space as Carl Benson grips the ceremonial scissors beside Ethan Miller. His hands tremble slightly, remembering how those same fingers had once thrust termination papers at this young man who dared to show mercy. The sound of the ribbon snipping seems to echo his own chains breaking. When I fired Ethan Miller, Carl Benson's voice carries across the hushed crowd. I thought I was protecting standards. I was wrong. I was protecting my fear. His gaze finds Major General Walter Greene's photo in the veteran's corner, the same man he'd helped cast out into the cold. That man wasn't just any veteran. He was a decorated hero who'd served with my father. My rules didn't just fail humanity that day, they failed my own family's legacy. The weight of his transformation settles over Carl Benson as he watches elderly veterans being served hot coffee and warm meals, a policy he'd once forbidden. Each cup passed across the counter dismantles another brick in the wall of rigid control he'd built around himself. The security cameras that once monitored for infractions now capture moments of compassion for their training videos. My father taught me that leadership meant maintaining order. Carl Benson continues, his voice thick with emotion. But true leadership, I've learned, means knowing when compassion must override control. Every veteran here today reminds me that strength isn't in the rules we enforce, it's in the humanity we embrace. Veterans approach Carl Benson throughout the morning, sharing stories of times they'd needed help and found none. Each handshake, each tear-filled thank you strips away another layer of his former self. The man who once prided himself on never making exceptions now understands that exceptions are where humanity lives. For him. Type, "Compassion wins if you believe in second chances," flashes across the screen as Carl Benson pins his old manager's badge to the wall of change alongside stories of transformation. The harsh fluorescent lights that once cast shadows of judgment now warm the space like a welcome home. The hardest rules to break. Carl Benson reflects watching Ethan Miller train new staff in their veteran outreach program are the ones we create to protect ourselves from our own humanity. Sometimes the bravest thing a leader can do is admit they were wrong. The day ends with Carl Benson locking up, not to keep people out, but to prepare for tomorrow's welcome. His new badge catches the light differently now. It's no longer a symbol of authority, but a reminder of responsibility to the community. Share this story to spread the power of compassion appears as Carl Benson takes one final look at his father's photo. Sometimes, he whispers, the greatest honor we can give our principles is knowing when to let them evolve. The security footage from that fateful day plays silently on a loop in the corner display, not as a warning, but as a testament to change. Carl Benson watches his past self seeing now what he couldn't see, then that rules without compassion aren't principles at all. They're prison walls we build around our hearts. Drop 3. If this transformation touched your soul, shows as the final image captures Carl Benson and Ethan Miller serving coffee to a line of veterans, the old manager's badge gleaming in its display case transformed from a symbol of power to a beacon of change.